Sarah, hello.
Hello. Hi, Graham. Lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you again. Great, wonderful. So it's 3 o'clock now. So here in the main stage, we'll carry on with our Council of Europe themed afternoon. And I want to introduce Sarah Breslin and Jose Noijons, who are here to talk about the ECML. I'll let them explain what exactly that is if you don't know what it is. But ALTE is a member of its professional network forum. And Sarah, if I may say, your predecessor is now our chair of the trustees, that's Waldek Martiniuk. And so, you know, we have a very strong connection with the ECML. And therefore, thank you very much for coming to our event today. So, Sarah, the floor is yours. You just need to, there you go, there's your presentation on there. Perfect. Okay, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Graham. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this second presentation, this time from the Council of Europe's European Centre for Modern Languages. My name is Sarah Breslin, and I'm the Executive Director of the ECML. And I'm really only here today to top and tail this presentation, because most of the hard work will be done by one of our leading experts in the field of assessment, Jose Noijons, and I'll be handing over to him shortly. Just a quick thank you to ALTE, especially to Graham, to Maria Angela and to Nick for inviting us to speak to you today. As Graham said, I'm taking the opportunity to tell you a little bit about the presentation, about the European Centre for Modern Languages, for those of you who perhaps don't know the Centre very well. It's an enlarged partial agreement of the Council of Europe, situated in the beautiful city of Graz in Austria. And we work at the interface of policy, research, teacher education and practice in the field of language education. And we support our member states to implement language policies and practices aligned with the fundamental values of the Council of Europe, democracy, human rights and the rule of law, which in the context of language education are operationalised through what my colleague was talking about, plurilingual and intercultural education, which contributes to democratic cultures. But how do we do it? We do it through a 4-year programme based on identified priorities in our member states. And that combines development projects with training and consultancy, where a development project has been completed and then is taken, the outputs are taken into member states and adapted and contextualised. We also, of course, have activities for a wider public, such as the European Day of Languages, webinars or certification and conferences such as this one. We work, of course, directly with our member states through the governing board, people from ministries of education usually, but also national institutions related to language education in the individual countries and with individual experts, but also through partnerships. We have a long-standing partnership with the European Commission, and it's the European Commission that allows us to co-fund the activities that Jose will talk to you about in a moment. And another very important partnership, which has been mentioned several times today, is our professional network forum. It was established in 2012, really to bring together all of the INGOs working in the field of language education, so that we can tap into each other's expertise, learn from each other, share our research projects, and perhaps work on new joint projects. And ALTE is a long-standing and very important member of the ECML for us. I just wanted to show you how we organise our resources, because after 25 years working in language education, we've covered a vast amount of activities, and they're organised here in these thematic areas. Of course, the thematic areas overlap, but it's just an organisational tool to help you find things. But what lies at the heart of it is supporting the professionalisation of all actors in the field. And the current title of our programme at the moment is exactly about evolving competences and changing contexts. And if we think about COVID, it's very much been a changing context for all of us. You can see that curricula and evaluation is one of the key thematic areas. So what are some of the challenges? And why is it sometimes considered the undesirable aspect of language education? What can we do to challenge this perception? How can learning be supported and enhanced by appropriate tools such as portfolios or focused feedback? And these are just some of the key questions that Jose will address. So without further ado, I will hand over to Jose and I will come back at the very end. Thank you. Well, perhaps I know time is tight, so until he comes back, this first slide is just a little bit of background to the RELANG project. It began as an ECML development project and has turned into an ECML training and consultancy activity. And you can see here what it's all about. And at the moment, and since 2012, we've had co-funding for this particular training and consultancy through the European Commission, which has allowed us to deliver around 70 workshops in 30 countries. And of course, because of the cooperation with the Commission, these can be ECML member states, but they can also be EU countries which are not ECML member states. And as indicated on the slide, it's all based on the linking procedure from the manual. And then from the publication that the RELANG team, which as a project team was RELEX, which was highlights from the manual, a kind of simplified version to get people started. And they're the tools that Jose and his colleagues use to deliver their workshops. You can see from this slide that the RELANG activities have developed over the years. Here you see a list of the different modules that countries can choose from. So if a country asks for support in the area of relating language tests, assessments and examinations to the CEFR, it has a range of modules to select from. And you can see, of course, how these have evolved. Looking at assessing mediation, of course, that was in line with the publication of the companion volume. And similarly, the most recent module, which has been added on testing literature and creative texts. Now, I'm warning you, if this gets too technical, I might not be able to carry on, but I'll do my best. On this slide, we're looking at some of the issues, some of the problems that the RELANG team identifies when it's working with different countries and different contexts. The absence of this concept of language use, an emphasis on receptive skills only and exclusively, or overemphasis on grammar and vocabulary. And this notion of how reliable are the tests, what are the procedures, the standard setting, the benchmarking procedures used in order to prepare the tests. And you can see again what some of the issues are when it comes to foreign language examinations based on the CEFR. So a link is claimed, but it doesn't actually follow through from the curricula. And that's really where it needs to start from.
So what we find is really that in many of the curricula and of the examinations that were shown to us, there is a lot of multilingual assessment, but less so of plurilingual competence. So the idea of switching from one language to another, or express oneself in one language or dialect and understand the person speaking another, call upon the knowledge of a number of languages, all of those things. Most of this is not present in many of the foreign language, was not present in many of the foreign language tests and examinations that were shown to us. But there was a need really to move backwards to the construction of a curriculum. But it must be said that nowadays, in many countries, we see that the curriculum has been adapted to, for example, what is said in the companion volume about mediation and about plurilingual and pluricultural skills. The next slide, please. So what we did, in fact, was go back from the exams and from the tests to the curriculum. And in a way, this links up with what in the curriculum literature is called backward design and constructive alignment. Now, constructive alignment is devising teaching and learning activities and assessment tasks that directly address the intended learning outcomes. And the principle of constructive alignment then is based on the idea that educational assessment and learning activities need to be aimed at and aligned at with the learning objectives. Student behavior then, and motivation, is often determined by assessment, as you know. It is important then to realize that when tests and examinations recognizably assess the learning objectives, the students will be prepared to align their learning activities to the achievement of these objectives. Now, you must not misinterpret what I'm saying. I'm not saying that you should start teaching the tests, that you should train them in a multiple choice exam. That's not the idea. But to make it clear to them why they're learning, what the learning outcomes are, and to phrase these learning outcomes in language that the students can understand. Now, backward design is similar. It is designing an educational curriculum by setting learning objectives, learning outcomes, before, in fact, using the instructional method and forms of assessment. Thus, in developing the curriculum, the emphasis in constructive alignment is on safeguarding a relationship between learning objectives and learning outcomes. In the next slide, you see how backward design works. You first identify desired results and you determine acceptable evidence, tests, for example, and then you plan learning experience, and then you go back and put your big ideas and skills in a wonderful curriculum set. So this is, in fact, the process that in practice we move through. The next slide, please. Because can I have the next slide? Thank you. So what we did was we moved backwards to the curriculum. And there were a number of issues then, because as far as the content was concerned, we found, of course, that there was not enough awareness of the CFR concept of language use. Ahmed earlier told us about this idea that it is action-oriented, that there is a range of competencies, that there are various contexts, and that there are various themes in specific domains. All of that was missing in many of the curricula that we saw. The learning outcomes should then be termed, we found, in terms of can-do statements if the curriculum and the exam was to be linked to the CFR. The understanding and inclusion of the concept of mediation was very important, and still many countries are not sure whether they should include mediation and how to do that. And there is, of course, this understanding of pluricultural and plurilingual competence that was missing from many of the curricula. And from a system point of view, there was all sorts of issues to do with data collection, with the choice of a proficient user level for the first foreign language. Why do countries wish their students to reach C1 level if there is no apparent need for this? What is behind it? And the same for independent use of second foreign language. And also the parallel requirement for foreign languages, where you would expect a student of French or German to reach the same level, but then the exposure to these languages is perhaps difficult enough. And then also there should be an agreement, of course, among member states on CFR level. The famous question, is my B1 your B1? Now let's move to the next slide. What we found, or rather what David Little in a webinar also pointed out, was that with COVID-19, there was all sorts of problems with grades when the central examinations weren't taking place. And school grades had to be turned into examination grades, and that was an issue. David Little's point really is better forget about grades and start expressing your levels in terms of CFR can do statements. Next slide, please. Next slide, yes. So when we had then another look at the curriculum, many countries changed their curriculum, we could go back to assessment and make sure that relevant learning outcomes were selected in terms of CFR can-do statements, include the communicative language activities of reception, production, interaction, and mediation, and all of them rather than one or two that were easily tested. Align testing objectives with learning objectives, as I pointed out earlier. Set performance standards, determine the rationale for a minimum performance standard, and collect performance data in order to improve and adapt various processes. Now, as a conclusion, I would like to say that both in the process of renewing the curriculum and in these times of COVID-19, it's worth moving backwards to curricular goals on what the students perform in tests and examinations. This should be part of an ongoing validation or process of the curriculum, teaching, and the assessment, and it may help to think of new ways of providing evidence to stakeholders that students can do what the curriculum they can do. Over to you, Sarah.
Thank you very much, Jose. And I would just like to finish off by saying that Jose was probably too modest to mention the fact that the feedback from these RELANG training and consultancy events has been overwhelmingly positive, sometimes with the same country coming back for more, but looking perhaps at a different language that they're offering in their curriculum, or moving from a focus on final examinations to how to adapt their curriculum. We've had more requests this year in 2021 than any time before, and that in the full knowledge that current workshops, of course, are all taking place online. So all credit to Jose and the other members of the RELANG team. Just as a final comment, I would invite you to explore our website. It really is a treasure chest of resources. And to thank you all for listening, because it's really only as a community that we can work together to improve quality language education and build stronger, more socially cohesive European societies. So thank you very much.
Sarah, thank you very much. Thank you for finishing beautifully on time as well. And thank you for explaining the work of the ECML and indeed all those new opportunities that the companion volume offers us and challenges, I guess, as well. So thank you very much to both of you. It's brilliant that you've been here. Again, I completely agree with Sarah. Do take a look at the ECML website. She's absolutely right. It is a treasure chest of resources there for you. Thanks again to both of you. We're now going to take a short break, time for me to get a cup of tea and hopefully you too, but do take a look at our sponsors booths in the main exhibition hall. We've got just over 20 minutes. We're going to start again at 15:45 Central European time, and you'll have a choice of 3 different sessions. If you stick with me in the main stage, we're discussing less commonly taught and less commonly assessed languages, or go to room 1 for a workshop on the companion volume that was just being talked about, or room 2 about inclusivity issues in language assessment. That's also a very, very relevant and timely discussion to have. So I'll see you back here in just over 20 minutes time. Thanks very much.